Welcome to another episode of Geek-Men and the Masters of the Thunder Nerds. I'm Dustin.
I am Bo.
And what do we have today, Bo? What's on our agenda today?
I think you got us a really cool guest. I'm looking forward to this. Let's just go ahead and jump into it.
Welcome, James Eatock. How's it going?
Hello.
The one and only CerealGeek. How's it going?
That is me for my sins. Yeah, good. It's actually a nice day today because the last few days have been excruciatingly hot over here in the UK. Believe it or not, we do have sunshine, and yeah, it was over the weekend. It was just horrific temperatures, and today's the first day where it's like, oh, it's actually there's a breeze and it's cool again and it's slightly grey. It's like this is more like it. You know, this is what everybody's used to. But I'm going to America for a month, so I'm going to Los Angeles in July, which I've done numerous times. And that's unbearable. So this kind of recent weekend of heat is kind of good preparation. It's like, oh yeah, it's going to be hotter than that. So yeah, I'm kind of Los Angeles and me and heat.
Yeah,
I was using my suitcase once I was walking. You know, nobody walks in LA except me. I was walking from where my bus had pulled to my hotel. And by the time I got to my hotel, which was probably a mile walk, which is nothing for me, the wheels of my suitcase had melted. I was like, bloody hell! It was so hot. So I was like, because I was walking, and the next minute I'm dragging. I'm like, why am I dragging my suitcase? I looked at the wheels. I stupidly touched the wheel as well. I was like, oh, because it melted and just it was so hot. It was unbelievable. So, right, lesson learned. So yeah, carry my suitcase everywhere in LA anyway.
Jeez.
So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
What are you excuse me? What are you gearing up to come down here for?
So I mean, like, I think this is like my 16th, 17th trip to America, and you know, I usually go every year, but then this certain pandemic happened, so that really, you know, that wasn't able to travel for so many years, which really sucked. So it's like, oh, I'm finally getting back out to Los Angeles, America, and everything. So I'm there for like over a month, doing Los Angeles and New York, which I've been to before, but I was like, oh, I've never done them both in the same trip. So I'm going to Los Angeles for 26 days, like hanging out with friends and stuff, but also seeing a few of the, my friends in the animation industry. So that'll be really nice. But also, we're doing 4 or 5 days of filming, I guess, wrapping up, as it were, for the Fake Information documentary, the whole Return of Faker thing.
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully, yeah, that will kind of reach a conclusion of sorts. I know Rob has to do one more bit of filming in September, but yeah, primarily I think towards the end of July we'll be doing. Yeah, oh, there we go, a handy little graphic to pop up. So yeah, we'll be doing the just like filming, talking heads and stuff, seeing a few people. Yeah, so that's 4 days, but the other 22 days I'm in Los Angeles, that's just pleasure completely. I just want to have a holiday, dying to go on holiday.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, flying over to New York and having about, just over a week there of just enjoying New York. So, yeah, it should be fun.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, it's I'm due a holiday, that's for sure. Yes. Fingers crossed it all goes swimmingly.
Yeah.
Well, how did this project come about? Because this is, I mean, there's fan films, but then there's like next level, like
there's next level
legitimate.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because I think that was the thing when the copyright owners who are Classic Media, Universal, NBC Universal, whatever you want to call them, they were well aware that we were doing this because I was working with Universal on the official He-Man YouTube channel, so I had a good working relationship with them, and I said I'm going to do this unofficial fan film, and they were like, yeah, sure, so long as you make sure it's unofficial. I was like, yeah, we're just going to put it on YouTube. And I think they just, I don't mean to be detrimental to any other fan films over the years of any kind of shows, but I think they were just expecting like, oh, that's cute, that's a little fan film. And then what we created was like an actual 40-minute episode, which people went, oh shit, this is like, to the point where when we were uploading clips to YouTube initially, people were like, what episode's this from? And it's like, no, we made this. This is just completely Is it just a fan project? And yeah, it just went so well. We're due to, like, finish up a few extra scenes and stuff, but yeah, it's one of the kind of proudest things I've ever worked on.
Yeah.
And we kind of not so secretly showed it at PowerCon, the final version in 2019, and I've never seen like that reaction. I think it was like I was told afterwards, there's a room full of like about 400 people, and I showed it and the end credits rolled, and luckily I filmed it as evidence, because I was just like filming. I was like, oh, I want to film people's reaction to it, like a live reaction video.
Yeah.
So I filmed reactions, and at the end everybody stood up like a standing ovation. I was like, oh, I think I might cry. It was just so amazing to have that kind of reaction. It was and bless him, like Pixel Dan leapt on stage and he was like, he may take this back, but at the time I believe he passionately, truly meant it. And he was like, and he pointed at the screen. He goes, no matter what Mattel want to do, no matter what happens next, he goes, that is He-Man. And I was like, oh, that's really sweet, because he was saying like that's everything that He-Man needs to be.
Yeah.
That's like the passion right there. And then of course, like I think the following day, that's when Kevin Smith turned up at PowerCon and said, oh, we're doing Revelation. And yeah, it's just, one of those things. But yeah, I think that was partly the reason why Mattel, Universal Mattel, whoever, didn't want our cartoon being shown at the same time, because I think there was that people would come away from the convention going, oh yeah, I saw the new He-Man cartoon, the Faker one. It's like, no, there's a new He-Man cartoon coming out on Netflix. Because they talked about in their letter to me, their cease and desist was about brand confusion. And then literally, a few months after that, they announced 2 cartoons at the same time, which had people going, what? There's like a CGI cartoon and Revelation? Well, I don't understand. That was like brand confusion, like nobody's business. But yeah, The Return of Faker, anybody who's ever seen it has reacted like really well. It's exactly what I wanted. Just people to be like, oh shit, this is like really bloody good. And so yeah, that was, we put everything into it. Me, Dushan, and like Yuka, Andrew Kramer, and Keith. Just like a few of us just working on bits and pieces. It all came together rather swimmingly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was a smart move to take advantage of the whole modus operandi of how that show was put together. I mean, through the animation reuse and stuff. Yeah,
it was a lot of hard work though, because you think if anything, it would have been easier if we'd animated everything new, but to go in and you have to work out how the stock works, and that was the most complicated thing, because there's Dushan, who like my partner in crime on so many projects. He was the one that sourced all the stock, traced every visual you see in that in terms of animation is him tracing every single frame that was necessary. But for the stock, you had like Photoshop files, like PSD files that were like 100, 200 layers of just head turns, character walking into shot, looking this way, this, for instance, He-Man walks into shot. There's the version where He-Man walks into shot. There's the version where he's got the sword on his back. There's the version where he exits that way, or he continues straight. There's all these permutations. His head. There's happy mouth, sad mouth. There's surprise. There's all these different versions that people, I don't think, really see at the time. But when you're putting together the stock library and building it back from all these different episodes, you're like, oh bloody hell, this is real. Like there was a wonderful. I've got a sketch that someone at Filmation did back in the 80s, I think during He-Man, and it said it's got. I think it was something like Filmation. We make the simple complicated, because it's that thing of, oh yeah, everybody's going to see our animation and think it's very simple. And it's like, no, if anything, it was really bloody complicated, because you're saying, oh, I want this bit of stock, but then we've got some new stock, or so it was creating that stock library was part of it was a really arduous process. But Dushan did like a fantastic job where, again, tracing all that line art was, I don't know, it's just phenomenal to be able to do that. And like the end result worked really well. Plus we could include like a bunch of Easter eggs. So when we had He-Man and Faker fighting, we were tracing, because I was doing the rough tracing for these scenes, and this was like Brave Star versus 3030 from the Brave Star the Legend, because they're like real punchings, like physical punches in that movie. So it's like, okay, we'll just trace them as He-Man and Faker. And even though there's the size difference between Brave Star and the giant 3030 android horse, we kind of manipulated it and made it work, and it turned out like, yeah, really nice, because we had He-Man and Faker actually fight, not just like initially they throw boulders at one another, that kind of bullshit, but then it was like, no, let's actually have them go really at it. So there's like kicks and punches and stuff, and what the biggest cheer at PowerCon that I knew was going to get the biggest cheer is when He-Man kind of smiles and then just wreaks havoc on Faker, and everybody cheered. And I was like, yeah, because I knew that was going to happen. I was like, that is going to send people insane, and it really did. It was like, it's everything you wanted in a reaction. It's like, I'm putting this out there. Are people going to react at the right moments? And they totally did. That was the best bit.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love it.
I want to touch on what you were saying earlier. It's like, a lot of people, they have shows where they break down the things that they love and they kind of keep the history alive. But you like come kind of full circle on it. Like, you're not only like a custodian, you're like an official contributor.
Oh, there's been
having written not one but two He-Man compendium guides. Like,
well, I mean, the amount of stuff I've worked on is ludicrous. Like, to the point where I've forgotten. I forgot what was that classic. I've forgotten more than I remember. That kind of thing. It's just there's so, because obviously the first job I ever had working on the brand was on the 2002 cartoon, because that was when, back in the early days of the He-Man community, which was 1995 onwards. I was just on the online trying to, it's so hard to explain to people just how little information there was on He-Man and She-Ra back in late 95. You go on the net and there was nothing. There was just no information. It's just like, how many episodes are there? That's when I started reaching out to writers, and that's when Larry DiTilio and I started chatting in, I think, 1996 or 7. And once we got chatting, he was able to answer a bunch of questions. But then, like, Robert Lamb discovered this website that myself and this other guy, Zadok Angel, ran. We ran this website, and Robert Lamb stumbled upon it, and he started communicating with us. And he was like, "Hey, have you seen this He-Man series Bible?" I was like, "Oh my God, the series!" But so we upload that. Have you seen these storyboards, all these sketches? And so that's where the knowledge came from. Mm-hmm. And Zadok was like, around about 2001, just scarily just before 9/11, I'd met Zadok in the real world. We'd known each other for years doing this He-Man and She-Ra website, and we met each other, I think it was like a week or two before 9/11. It was like August of 2001, and we decided, let's not do this website anymore, because it was so much hard work, all this work we were putting into it. And then the moment we closed the website, literally within a week, I think it was, Mattel got in touch and they said, "Hey, you and Zadok do this episode review website. Do you want to kind of write an encyclopedia, a Filmation encyclopedia for the writers of the new series?" So I was like, okay. And it's so funny looking back, it paid barely anything. But, in 2001, your first chance to work on He-Man, you're like, oh my God, I'll take it. It was crazy. When I look back, the amount of work we put into that, it's just like, is that all we got paid? It was like $1,000 each, which is what we did. Like, these days, I could command like $10,000. Not that anyone's going to pay me that, but it was like, what's the amount of work? And apparently, for the longest time, Mattel was still using that in-house for classics, because some of the bios for classics had spelling errors that we'd done not purposefully, because we didn't have the scripts in 2001 when we wrote the encyclopedia. So there was certain spelling errors we just didn't know, and they made their way into classics. And it's like, yeah, you're still using our material, aren't you? So that was fun. But yeah, we did these 2002 guide. It was so funny, but it was so exciting as well, because there was this new He-Man cartoon coming out in 2002, and it was like, oh, I can't wait. And we'd get emails saying, "Oh, we need a bio for Count Marzo immediately." And it's like, "Oh, they're going to put Count Marzo in the series," or we need another one was we need Evil Seed. It's just like, you're gonna, okay, oh my God, Evil Seed. So we knew all this stuff like way ahead of time. And we had the series Bible for that as well. And there was, I think it was the season 1 Bible where you turn the pages, and the last page was this silhouette of Hordak. It was so fucking cool. Just like slightly. He was silhouetted, but he had like grey outlines. It was like, oh my God, they're going to bring Hordak into this, and it was just like, he will come about, like he'll be hinted at in season 1, but I was just like, oh my God, they're going to bring. And then there was a sketch of King Grayskull, and it was just like, who's this dude? It was just really, really exciting. And Pravus, who was the biggest disappointment. I don't know if you remember Pravus from the 2002 cartoon. They made him into a figure. this big blue demon dude, giant horns, and I was like, he's the coolest looking like design ever. And then he's in the episode, the one with the Tila Sorceress Origin, I guess. He's in it for about 5 seconds, and he gets defeated. It was like, oh, he looked real badass. But yeah, from there, like I went, I worked briefly on the 2002 cartoon related comics, then the DVDs for the UK, America, then what was after that? YouTube channel, bios for pop culture shop collectibles, and then the books started happening. Yeah, I did I think I worked on every book. The Art of He-Man book was the first one. Then the mini comic book, I contributed to that, and the art book, mini comic book, the cartoon book. Obviously, that was my opus, as it were. And then a few others that followed. I think I stopped when it was the toy book. That was the one they didn't invite me to work on. I'd done everything else, and it was just like, I did offer. I said, I'll do some trivia for the toy book, and they were like, no, we're cool. So okay. But and then the most recent thing I did was the German Blu-ray set for He-Man and She-Ra. So it was it's been a weird, I guess, 20. When I worked it out, it was a case of I think I'd worked on He-Man and She-Ra every year since 2001 in some official capacity. Just like, bloody hell, that's nuts. Just when I realized, it was like, wow, that's and even things I didn't think I was going to work on, like the when we did the Super 7, what do they call it, like neo vintage figures or whatever they were, was like the original figures, but they were Filmation designs.
Oh, right.
Oh yeah,
that was the Super 7. Like I had a really good working relationship with Super 7 as well. That was a good company to work for. Brian and the guys, they're a really, really good bunch. And but yeah, it's nuts when I think about all that stuff. Just like, wow, where did it all go?
Well, what was the thing? How did you get into what? Because that's what I love about He-Man is how every country has like their own version of how he was introduced, and yeah, he got around. Just how much he got around, even if he wasn't like officially there, he made it there. Like, what was your first interaction with He-Man as a child?
I mean, I still remember I remember vividly the cartoon, but I remember like getting the figures. I definitely, because that was the thing, as growing up, I remember, in the early days of the He-Man community, I kept thinking, did I enjoy the cartoon then the toys? And then there was a photo of me from a friend's wedding in the photo album, and I realized, like, oh my god, they got married in March of '83. The cartoon didn't come about for another like 6 months. Therefore, I was already collecting the toys. And I've got like very vivid memories of buying He-Man figures, and I remember sitting at my table with a Beastman figure, reading looking at the Power of Point Dread comic, Power of Point Dread mini comic. But yeah, I was big into the figures initially, and then I've told the story before. Like the cartoon was teased, I think it was like the last week of August, 1983, and I was just like, I was like, oh, they're doing a cartoon of He-Man. Like again, it's very childlike memories. But then I still remember like the first time I watched it, because it was September the 5th, 1983. And yeah, the cartoon aired, and I was just like, well, as I've told the story before numerous times, it aired in the UK two and a bit weeks before America. So the UK got the worldwide debut of the He-Man cartoon, which is so random. But as I always tell people, don't get too jealous, because the way the UK used to show cartoons was one episode per week, but in batches. So we had 4 episodes of He-Man, then no He-Man until January of 1984, and again 1 episode per week. So by the time the series had actually finished, as in 1985, we were still getting season 1 episodes over here. I think the last new episode we got was like early 1988. It was like 3 years after the series and She-Ra had completely finished production, but we were still getting new episodes. It was so I think that over here in the UK anyway, even though we got a lot of the same stuff America did, there was some sort of longevity, because we had this this He-Man was like so popular until about, I want to say about 1990. They were still doing reruns. It was like it's like the go-to cartoon. Just put He-Man on the summer mornings, and when the kids are off school, and you get viewing figures. And yeah, He-Man in the UK, because at the time when He-Man first happened, we had 3.5 channels. It was BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, and Channel 4, which didn't start until 4:30 in the afternoon. So it's like 3.5 channels. So when He-Man aired, it was getting viewing figures around about 7 to 8 million, which nowadays would be, I mean, back then that was bloody good. But these days, like Netflix and those kind of streaming services would cry out for those kind of numbers. They just don't get those.
Yeah.
They get hundreds of thousands, and obviously stuff like Stranger Things and Squid Game, they're doing millions.
Yeah.
But so many other things on Netflix and a lot of those streaming platforms don't even break that, which is it's just the way modern society is with what we consume, isn't it? YouTube, all these different things. Whereas back in the day, it was like television. That's it. We had distractions. Don't get me wrong, but it was, there's a reason He-Man was getting 7 million viewers in the UK, is because you had all these kids after school sitting down and watching one of two kids broadcasts. It was most kids are watching He-Man. But yeah, it was so hard to explain to people how big He-Man was. It was He-Man, the big ones, He-Man, Transformers, Mask was really big over here. Real Ghostbusters, and then the last big one I remember was Ninja Turtles, and then Power Rangers, but I'd kind of grown out of that, I guess, by that point. But He-Man was ridiculous at school. I remember just everybody just loved it. The assignment, you'd go in on a Monday, the teacher would say, no, sorry, you'd go in on a Tuesday morning, the teacher would say, draw, what you did over the weekend, and every kid in the class, guaranteed, boys and girls, were drawing something He-Man related. I remember, I'll never forget, one kid drew, it was like a 2-page spread. I'll never forget this, in like an exercise book, a 2-page spread, and it was just Zor on both pages, because he bought the new Zor toy. And he had this huge illustration of Zor, and I used to watch the cartoon every Monday, so I'd be drawing scenes that I could remember from the cartoon. It was it was so wonderful back then. And even, like I said, the early days of the internet were equally as wonderful. That voyage of discovery. Even to this day, there are still things I still discover about a cartoon that is approaching 40 years old. It's nuts. It's like, bloody hell, that was that long ago. But we ain't getting any younger, so yeah.
Yeah, that's the truth.
did that factor, like the way we consume media now? Is that a conscious choice, or just a conscious kind of plateau that's always in the back of your mind when you're creating videos that kind of?
I mean, at the moment,
things?
I'm experiencing it with I've got YouTube came about 2006, or that's when it became like the big thing. Or at least the video sharing place. And I created a YouTube channel, I think at the beginning of 2007. And all I did was use it to promote my CerealGeek magazine. I was like, I put a bunch of 80s clips up, 100 or so. And at the start of them, it will say like CerealGeek, cartoons of the 80s with like a, www.cerealgeek.com. I thought that'd be a really good way to advertise. Use this YouTube to advertise my magazine. And I never looked at that channel after. I just uploaded the videos. I was like, advertise away, and it got like 3,000 or 4,000, I think 3,000 subscribers. I was like, that's pretty good over the course of a few years. But the views on my channel are ridiculous, because that channel is 15 something years old. It's like a few of my videos have got like 5 million views, but it's just clips from. There's one clip of the Hulk, I think it is, just like a transformation sequence from the 1982 Hulk cartoon. It's got like over 5 million views. I would kill for like 100,000 views at the moment. And that's the other thing I've discovered. I launched my YouTube channel in, I guess, August, September of last year. And, I've got all this experience of talking about 80s cartoons over the years. I've worked on so many of them officially. And I thought, I should do a YouTube channel. And obviously it's like, well, I'm going to be competing with all these other YouTube channels. And I mean, like, I launched this YouTube channel. I was under no false impressions that I'm going to do brilliantly, but it's much harder to gain traction than I thought. And I am doing what I think are creative videos. It's like, oh, I'm going to do a video that a lot of the videos are videos that only I can make, in the sense of, we do a video. The first video on the channel was, here's a piece of dialogue from the first episode of He-Man that you can never hear because they did the sound mix wrong, but we've unearthed it. There it is. There's this missing piece of dialogue, or something from a storyboard, or like at some point I want to do this on my YouTube channel. I own these sketches that are probably the first sketches of Marvel Productions working on the Transformers, like where they're trying to figure out what the aesthetic is for the robots rather than what we got. They were almost going for a slightly, if you can imagine, Hanna-Barbera-esque rounded design, more not cutesy, but less obvious in design, I guess is the best way to put it. But yeah, it's so stuff like that I'm bringing to the channel, or like, I know people on YouTube have done videos about Janine Melnitz, but it's like, yeah, but I do a video about Janine Melnitz and how her character devolved in terms of design and personality. But I can do that from the point of view that, I know these people that worked on this show, like personally, and that's the thing I try to bring. But, to your average Joe looking at my channel, it's just like, oh, another video about another Thundercats video, another Ninja Turtles video. But if they were to click on it and watch it, they'd be like, oh shit, it's actually relatively interesting, because there's some wealth of information and material there. And it's like this weekend, I've got like a 20-minute video, which is just showcasing all the design process for Tex Hex, because I have access to all that artwork of Tex Hex being a villain from the Filmation Ghostbusters cartoon to what they ended up with. There's all these sketches, what the artists were trying to come up with. That's not a video that's going to be anywhere else on YouTube. But like I say, it's like you're talking about, in the back of my mind, that whole thing of trying to get the views, and I'm also the world's worst promoter of my own material. People are like, oh, what's your channel about? And it's like, oh, it's about 80s cartoons. Whereas I've seen people promote themselves and it's like, hey everybody, and they're just like, I can't really be that person. I am me. I'll promote my stuff as best I can, but I'm not going to become a character. It's just me. This is me on the video.
That's a better approach always. You put a lot of work into your videos. They're very the deep dive of knowledge that you dig up and present is insane.
No, it's just that thing. Like, I've got such a passion for it. I think that the confusing thing for a few people that have known me for decades is, oh, you like other cartoons as well. It's like, yes, I know I'm the He-Man and She-Ra guy, but like I have access and love to all these other shows of the past, and it's the beauty of the channel. Like, because the reason I started it was, work was kind of not drying up, but I guess in a way it was. Like, Mattel just weren't coming to me anymore. So that's fair enough. That's their choice, I think there was like an email that was talking about, not to me personally, but that went around talking about like the direction that Mattel wanted to take the brand, and it was kind of, let's not go to these guys anymore. So there are certain names that worked on the brand for decades that just aren't there anymore, or contributing, myself and a few others included. And I'm cool with that. But I thought, what's a good way to kind of get my passion for that back out there? And I thought, oh, YouTube channel. Like, and it's something I've been planning since the beginning of the pandemic. I remember when the pandemic happened, I thought, how can I want to do something that people enjoy on like the old episode review website. We used to update it every Saturday, almost like Saturday morning cartoons. Come and watch the latest, or come and see the latest review and listen to sound clips. And I thought, I'd love to do that again for like a YouTube channel. It's a lot of work, but yeah, I just thought it'd be really good, like a hook. I can't do it every Saturday, but most Saturdays are like planned. And I've already started. Well, I've finished a couple of videos for 2025. I thought, let me just get them out of the way now, so they'll sit there. So I've got like a video for sometime, like it's just an episode commentary for a He-Man episode. It's like, yeah, January of 2025, so it's well over a year away. But I was like, do it now. Don't have to worry about it then. So yeah, it's but I do love talking about 80s cartoons. It's as you can tell, it's just like I could happily talk about 80s cartoons.
Yeah.
Till the cows come home, as they say.
Well, I have a question I'm dying to ask you. People who grew up in the 80s, they love the 80s cartoons. it's you grow up and you realize that you had all these people, these super talented people that would go on. You know, your Bruce Timms, your Paul Dini's,
Yeah.
and they were just giving a project like it was work because
Yeah.
you know they've come, you know, they flat out admitted, you know, cartoons are just advertisements for the toys, but you would have people like J. Michael taking advantage of that and creating like one of the most renowned sci-fi shows, Captain Power. Like, what do you think it is about that approach to writing back then versus now? Because I don't see people are given properties that they love now and they don't put as much love into it.
I think the thing is, I was having this conversation with someone recently. I think there's like, you look at the writers, like, you know, Larry, like people who are sadly no longer with us, like Larry DiTillio, Michael Reeves, and then you say like Straczynski, Paul Dini, Mark Scott Zicree, Tom Ruger, Robbie London, all these writers that worked on He-Man and She-Ra, they grew up reading some of the best sci-fi writers and comic books around. You know, your Stan Lees, your H.P. Lovecrafts in terms of fantasy, like, you know, crazy stuff. All these, and it was like in the, you know, when you think about it, if you're growing up, if you were born in like the 50s or 60s, you're growing up like at the golden age of Marvel Comics or DC Comics. DC Comics had obviously been around a bit longer, but you're getting all this, you know, wonderful ideas for story. I know Paul Dini admitted he was writing He-Man episodes like he was writing Marvel Comics, hence the titles like Prince Adam No More. It's like such a Stan Lee title. The Taking of Grayskull, they're very much, you know, Marvel Comics-esque titles. But I think these writers were just inspired by like all this wonderful stuff. I think, and you know, who am I to say? I'm not a very successful writer at all. But I think a lot of the writers on modern shows, like you say, they're handed the IPs, whether it be Transformers or He-Man or whatever. And even though they may have a passion for it, the problem, I think the biggest problem with modern writing is this ridiculous notion that you have to leave your mark on it. And I think when you look at, you know, the cartoons we grew up with in the 80s, they were leaving their mark on it in a different way, as in like very much a team effort. We're all a part of this thing. We're all a part of this IP.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't me just throwing shade at these people, but it's like, it's, you know, before it was He-Man, before it was Transformers, and before it was Ninja Turtles. Now it's Seth Rogen's Ninja Turtles. Now it's Kevin Smith's He-Man. And people may like those shows. And obviously the Seth Rogen's thing is that it's a film, but there's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's the names of these people are becoming more prominent than the IPs they're supposed to be representing. And it kind of sours it, because I don't think there's enough. There might be a passion for it, but, you know, I know for a fact, you know, Kevin Smith never watched more than a few episodes of the original series, you know, in terms of research. And I just don't, I'm not saying they don't have talent. I believe all these writers are talented. I just don't, I have a real issue with the whole thing of I want to leave my mark on it. So, you know, you see with a lot of Masters of the Universe stories, modern ones, there's these characters that are almost representative of the writer or the artist or whatever. It's like, I'm going to put myself in this comic. It's just like, you've got this wealth of wonderful characters. Tell a story with them. You know, this is like the least braggy thing ever, because I can't really follow it up. But when the pandemic started, like I said, I wanted to do something to keep people entertained. And I thought, oh my God, I know an artist, I know a colorist. I could like do my own fan online unofficial He-Man comic. So I started this comic called Masters of the Universe 85. It was called Masters of the Universe 85. We only managed to do like 7 pages. But the story I wanted to tell was just like a comic book story. There was a new character, but she was based on a Filmation kind of concept that never went anywhere. So I was like, oh, bring her into it. But it was never about, I'm going to leave my mark on the brand. It was just all about taking what had been established before and telling a new story, not a story where it's the end of the world and the multiverse and all this. It's just tell a bloody story. Just tell it. You should be able to do it. And I think that's the other thing. I think a lot of modern writers want to tell the mother of all stories. And this needs to be the bear. You know, it's just like, there's nothing wrong with telling episodic stories. Going back to what we said about the writers in the 80s, Larry DiTillio, Reeves, Straczynski, Dini, they're just telling episodic stories. And that's the beauty of that. You're able to put so much into like 22 minutes or a comic book that goes over a few issues. Whereas now we've got to tell the biggest story across, 10 episodes. And it's like, just tell a story. You
Right.
don't have to. And I get that people dig that. Like, I understand that. But I think there's, just like a lack of focus in terms of, they're kind of, I want to tell this big thing. It's just like, focus on this, because if you don't focus on this, you're going to forget everything else. And I think that's why there's so much kind of misrepresentation with He-Man, because they're not quite sure the character they're writing. And they're one of my issues with Revelation was their idea of He-Man was like this cheesy hero, and it's like, I get where you're getting that from, but that's not the character that was established over 130 episodes of He-Man and whatever cameos he made in She-Ra. That's just not the character that was there. And even if you were to look at the other canons in the 80s, He-Man's not the cheesy hero, but I understood why they were kind of getting that. But yeah, I feel like I'm just like old man shouts at cloud kind of thing. It's a tricky thing, because people always say, oh, why don't you should work on the brand, or you should write a comic. I was like, I do not want to write an official He-Man comic. I can't think of anything worse, because I'd start writing it and people would be like, this is bullshit, and I'm like, oh, I don't like this. It's just, or people coming after me on Twitter, you're lame. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, yeah, I think another thing that helped out was there was a lot more limitations back then. It was like they were given characters. Sometimes they were given stories. They're like, well, okay, we want this backstory to be this and that and whatever, and then they're just like, can you just make a product, make a commercial, make these guys look super cool?
Well, I would say that Filmation had the better end of that deal. Like, it's been talked about, I think, before. Well, it has before, but like, the writers at Filmation were, they never saw it as writing a commercial, or they were writing episodes of a cartoon. And like, you look at the series Bibles for He-Man, and especially She-Ra, and as a writer coming into that and reading that series Bible, where Larry DiTillio is talking about the infrastructure of Etheria and the social norms and all this stuff, it's like, if it was just the toy commercial, it would literally just say like, Catra, she's bad, she turns into a cat lady. There's no, but they were going at it so in depth with the lore and everything, and they're kind of Transformers gets a hard rap because it really was a case of, famously the movie comes along, kill all these characters off because we want to introduce the new toys. And then it gets really bad with David Wise, the late David Wise's Rebirth 3-parter that ends the Transformers G1 series, where it's just like, here's the headmasters and the target masters. We're going to name check them. That is probably the biggest toy commercial I ever saw during the 80s. Even as a kid, I remember thinking this was nothing more than a toy commercial, because it was the story was so minuscule. But when I always say, it's the funny thing is, when you look back at Filmation, is you had all these toys that Filmation were asked to promote, but Lou Scheimer had the final say in what they could do. So if you were to look at the series, like Triclops, I think he makes 11 appearances. Merman, something like 15 or 6. It's crazy the few times these characters appear, because Filmation relied on introducing guest characters that were never turned into toys most of the time. Granomir, Chakotay, Mask, again Malactha, all these different characters. So Filmation were making a cartoon about a toy line, but not making that the focus. And Transformers and G.I. Joe, I know they were more, if you look at the series Bibles for those shows, they are really geared towards, these are the new toys for 1985. Like when they introduced the special teams, the Protectobots, Stunticons, Combaticons, and I always lose one, Aerialbots, whatever. Those 4 teams, the combiners, that they really heavily say we need those in season 2 or 3 or whatever it was. And so you get that kind of with Marvel production shows, with G.I. Joe and Transformers, they really do push the toy thing very strongly. But at the same time, the writers weren't sitting there going, oh, let's make a new toy, I guess. They was like, well, how best can we introduce these things into a story without it being so fucking blatant.
Right.
And then you get something like, Larry DiTilio was asked to introduce Roboto, and he's like, I'll do that. He tells one episode about Roboto, and that's it. We never see Roboto again. The other one was the famous story was Stinkor, where Mattel go to Lou Scheimer with all their new toys, Too Bad, Stinkor, Spikor, Cyclone, Roboto. And Lou's like, I'm not using that character. Like, he refused. And Mattel were like, okay, that's the agreement we have. We can't force you to use any of these. And the other one, they never used the Bashosaurus in the cartoon because originally it was called the Ball Buster. And Lou was like, I'm not introducing a vehicle called the Ball Buster. So it is fascinating what it was the rarest toy cartoon deal in the 80s was that Lou Scheimer had the ability to just nix anything, but obviously at the same time he wanted to help out because he and Mattel had this wicked relationship back then, like really cool. Unfortunately, like the last thing they worked on was Brave Star, and that just bombed, unfortunately. But yeah, it's funny. I guess back then there was just, I would say about writing, there was less cynicism, there was less trying to be cool. We're going to tell stories with transforming robots. We're going to tell stories about a magical world of science and sorcery with He-Man and Princess of Power and all these 80s cartoons you can think of. Even when the writers had utter control over the content, where they weren't writing to any kind of rules or regulations, was the real Ghostbusters, which I always say is like the best written cartoon of the 80s, because it's one where you can close your eyes and listen to the dialogue, at least the first season, the syndicated season, and it's fantastic writing because these writers were literally like, oh, we get to write more. We get to write cartoons about, or we get to write stories about this wonderful movie that was made, this hit movie, Ghostbusters, and they went to town on it, and it was like stuff like that. I think the other thing as well, and this is a no-brainer because it's not infected, but it affects every form of entertainment these days. Is just rather than being given a job, everything is so micromanaged. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, we're going to write a cartoon. It's like, make sure you do this, 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 and this. And it's like, oh, can we just write a cartoon? It's like, nah, you got to tick these boxes. You got to make sure you do this. You got to make sure you do that. And it's just like, yeah, and and it's such a shame because we're seeing like, I'll keep this very brief, but I was such a huge fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU, because growing up as a kid, I was a huge Marvel Comics fan. I was buying Marvel Comics in 1982, like the original Hulk comics from in the early 80s, where it was in the Crossroads, I think it was called, of all universes. Then you had Thor by Walt Simonson, X Factor Simonson, all these. John Byrne's Fantastic Four, Secret Wars, all this stuff I absolutely adored. So when they announced they were doing the Marvel Universe or Iron Man, I was like, no one's going to go and see an Iron Man film. I would, because I read Bob Layton's Iron Man in the 80s, but I can't imagine anyone else going to go and see it. And then it became a hit, and out of that spawned slowly the Marvel Universe. And I was like, I wanted to see these scenes, on film for the longest time, and it reached a point with Endgame, and I was just like, oh my god, this is fantastic, this is everything I wanted. And then since then it just kind of nosedived, and I think it was almost like too much of a good thing. And then the more popular something becomes, the more people that shouldn't be involved in it get involved in it and go, well, this is a success, but now we're going to make it more successful. It's just like, no, step away, please. We're doing really well without you guys. So yeah, it's just, I think it's modern entertainment. It's so flawed in terms of how it's put together. I know that's like a bit of a thing, but yeah.
Well, I think it's it's like you said with Ghostbusters, and I related to the MCU where they had, Edgar Wright going to do Ant-Man, and him just not knowing anything about Ant-Man, but seeing what he had done with Scott Pilgrim, not knowing anything about Scott Pilgrim, but not wanting that vision. It's like people are given these opportunities, and you have these great writers like, let me take a crack at this, or just flat out saying like, no, I'm not right for this. But it doesn't feel like anybody says no these days.
No, and I kind of understand that to a degree, like, especially some of the contracts that go around these days. Like, I completely understand why Mattel approached Kevin Smith to make a He-Man cartoon, and it wasn't because Kevin Smith is known for his comic book work, because he really wasn't. He did a great run on Daredevil in '98, I think it was, but primarily he's a film writer director, and his films aren't, as we know, exactly He-Man fare, as it were. And I used to feverishly watch Fat Man on Batman, which was a podcast I've been doing like years and years and years. I used to watch that, and I mean, like, the infamous thing now is I remember him talking about it. He said, "Oh yeah, I used to." Someone's talking about it's his co-host who ended up writing on the show, Mark Bernardin, who is a really a sweet guy, and they're talking about the idea of, I think this was one of many rumors about a live-action He-Man movie, and Mark Bernardin says something like, the movie that nobody really wants, and Kevin Smith kind of goes, "Oh well, he goes, I kind of get the whole He-Man thing." He said, "I was just a bit too old from it. I come home from school and I'd see it on, but it was never really my thing." So when he was announced as working on it, I was like, "Oh, okay, Kevin Smith working on He-Man, that's interesting." And then when he started saying, "I used to watch it as a kid," I was just like, "Well, now you're lying, because that's I know for a fact." But it's the narrative they're creating. But then, one of Kevin Smith's things that I used to love that he used to say, why have you got to destroy something in order to raise your thing? In other words, why would you go around saying, "Oh, like, the modern Hulk is shit. My Hulk was better back in the day"? Because it's like, just know that your Hulk was better. You don't have to do. And yet, most of the marketing or the narrative they were putting out, which I know was for a fact they were intentionally doing, which was, the old He-Man comics and cartoon were misogynistic, and it's like, they had a fucking cartoon called She-Ra, which ran for 93 episodes. How is that misogyny? You had a bunch of writers, Larry DiTilio, Straczynski, Robert Lamb, all these guys writing powerful, strong females because they admired powerful, strong females. It's nuts. And to say like He-Man was misogynistic, it's like, or violent, it's like, did you ever actually watch it? This is nuts. So, to hear that, and like I say, Kevin Smith going around, and it was like, I understand why he was approached for the gig, because it, like I said, it becomes Kevin Smith is working on a He-Man cartoon, not new He-Man cartoon. Oh, who's writing it? That's some bloke. When it's Kevin Smith is the showrunner for a He-Man cartoon, it's a much bigger deal, and I get that. But the long-term thing is, how is it going to work? Because this is no disrespect to anybody that enjoyed Revelation. Like, one of my friends is executive produced that series. So someone I've known for years and years and years, someone I'm seeing when I'm out in Los Angeles in a month, was the producer on that series. And yet I've said to him, like, wasn't for me. Like, I understand it was for some people, and some people went absolutely crazy over it. But the thing that still shocks me, and I think kind of going back to our talk about modern entertainment and modern, the way people consume media, that shocked me how Revelation was talked about, for the two batches of episodes they had, and then the discussions about it and the interest in it just dropped. And I was like, why is nobody talking about this anymore? And that's the problem, I think, with telling the be all and end all story, because you don't give anybody the opportunity to invest about, oh, wouldn't it be great if there's no discussion points? If the beautiful thing about 80s cartoons or 60s comic books or whatever, all these characters, is you could say, oh, what about a Spider-Man like story in which this happens, or what about this? Well, if you do, if you do the be all and end all story in a form like Revelation, it's like, yeah, they're going to do another series with Revolution, but as fans, when you watch it, what is there to really discuss? You can discuss like what happened, but you can't go, oh, maybe this happened, or did it? It's like, oh no, that was established that this happened, that happened, this happened. Whereas in the 80s and stuff, or just in episodic storytelling, you can imagine other things. But we've seen Skeletor's got the power of Grayskull, Evil Lynn's got the power of Grayskull, and everybody's got the power of Grayskull these days, and it's just, it's a weird thing. But I understand why these guys and girls kind of, look, we saw it with Velma. It's just like, we're going to hire Mindy, I forget her surname, Kulag. We're going to hire Mindy to, show run this. And, what we saw was a kind of a bit of a horrible reaction to it, but also it was a very cynical show from what I saw. It was just like, this isn't, why is this a thing? Why? And that's the other thing. I mean, this is another rant altogether, but it's the IP, the intellectual property claim jumping, where it's, oh, we get to work on He-Man, or no, we get to work on Transformers. Let's tell our story of Transformers. It's just like, but why not tell the story of Transformers? Why does it have to be your? And again, it goes back to leaving your mark. Mindy gets Velma, and now it's Mindy's Velma. It's Seth Rogen's Turtles. It's Kevin Smith's He-Man. It was great back in the day when you just watched a show and you'd recognize, oh, Straczynski's written this episode. Or oh, cool. It wasn't about that person above everything else, because they never wanted it to be that. And I'd argue that some of those working on the modern shows who are kind of, we're the showrunner, they want to make sure that, I'm not going to deny that. Jessica's saying, sorry, Velma was so bad. Velma was so bad. Like, I saw a few bits and pieces of it, and it didn't feel like, it's like, why is it so cynical? Why? I mean, it was scarily, dare I say, a bit hate-filled in places where it's like, I don't know who is your audience for this? And I think that was the overriding thing. And yet, what have we got? They're doing Velma season 2, so it's like, what the hell? Like, what do we know? And I think, and this is the sad thing, and I think this covers a lot of modern entertainment. Velma season 2 will immediately, instead of going, we're going to rise above it and tell a good story, and it's immediately going to just shit on everybody that went after it. Yeah. So we didn't make a bad show. You people are bad, and that's the thing with modern entertainment as well. Is I think that She-Hulk TV.
Oh yeah, I was going to say.
Did the same thing. I couldn't like, I loved She-Hulk back in the 80s. Like, John Byrne's comic was fucking incredible. It's like, before Deadpool was full breaking the comics, She-Hulk was doing it. It was like, this is strong, powerful female Green Hulk. It was amazing storytelling. It was such a good comic. Yet they do a TV series, and it's like, let's just, we know we're gonna. It's almost like they form their own narrative to begin with. We know we're going to take a lot of shit, so let's just shit on those fans. Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, they have got a lot of ammunition to be able to do that, because there are a lot of YouTube channels obviously like, this is shit. And I understand why those channels exist, but now those channels exist and kind of exist for solely to do that, and that's a dangerous thing, because it's like,
you're part of the system.
That's exactly it. They are a part of the system. Like, there's some YouTubers are like so good at what they do, but they, I said before, like, I'm going to massively not do well on YouTube because I can't bring myself to do thumbnails with the words fail or worst or 101 reasons why this is the worst cartoon, the sad history of, and it's like, no, I can't do that. My videos are going to be Felines on Film, Thundercats, or He-Man's Missing Line. I'm doing, don't get me wrong, I'm going to do top 10 videos and stuff, or like ruining Janine Melnitz was an accurate thing about what I was talking in the video, but I'm not going to do that thing of, like, just shock. I could easily create thumbnails that would bring in hundreds of thousands of views, but it's like, but I couldn't look at myself in the mirror if I'd gone, well, you did do a thumbnail of, He-Man and Skeletor fucking, but it's just, but that's the thing. I could easily as well piece together audio clips to make it sound like He-Man, Skeletor, and a widget were going at it. I could easily do that. And someone on TikTok's going to do that and become like a billionaire, but it's just like, I can't do that, because it's just, that's not the passion I have. I'm more than happy to mock the cartoons that I grew up with, but it has to be, it's still, when I'm going to mock something or highlight something, it still has to come from a creative place. So if I'm going to say the circus episode of He-Man is the worst episode of the series, I'm going to say why. I'm going to do like a 20-minute exploration of why this is actually, that's the video spoiler for, I think around about Christmas of this year. I've already done it, is an episode commentary for the circus episode of He-Man, the greatest show on Eternia. And it's just, it's not me just going, this is rubbish, or, oh, it's no, this is me breaking it down. It's like, because I just, it's so easy to go for the lowest common denominator and just say, oh, this is, look how gay He-Man is, or look at Optimus Prime and Starscream having sex, and it's just like, what are you people seeing? Why do you have to, these are cartoons that were made for kids that we can appreciate as adults because the writers were doing their damnedest to write for themselves. But it's I don't think I'm going to win at the YouTube game because I just can't make those thumbnails or videos or be that person online going,
Right.
let me tell you why this sucks. It's just, I can't be that guy. I'm just going to keep, because I've had a few people say to me, oh, you should make a video about why you dislike Revelation. It's like, well, no, because what is the point of that? It'd probably be my best video on the channel, because you'd have a bunch of people going, oh, I love hate watching something, or I want to agree with him about why I dislike this. But it's like, I could make, instead of doing that, I could make a video about, I don't know, the Hulk cartoon or something, or showcasing some storyboards from He-Man or something. It's, I don't want to fall into that trap of becoming the hate channel.
Yeah.
It's just as I
don't think it's your
YouTubers
position.
make-
I don't think it's your position. I think what you do, if you didn't do what you do, we wouldn't still be talking about, we still wouldn't still be wanting to see these characters come back, the longevity of it, because you not only serve as a reminder for why we love things, like you have to preserve the truth about them, especially in the muck of how they're presented. Because not everybody approaches it with that amount of love. I think I'll constantly think of the Voltron Netflix cartoon about how those makers said, we're making the show that we remembered in our head.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's such a brilliant approach to it. And I think that's why that show, I really do love that show. But I think it does have to come out of a place of love, and hate's just more popular right now.
Yeah.
Because it's such an easy thing to, I've been guilty of it. I'll be flicking around on, I've got the old Amazon Fire Stick, and I'm going on my TV going through videos, and they'll just be some nerdrotic video or critical drinker, and I'm like, oh, I do want to find out what they're talking about on this thing, and it's just like, and now I'm part of the problem. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I think I'm not saying they don't provide a service, because what they do, those channels, is they highlight certain things, where certain narratives are being built or certain lies are being told, about the fans. Oh, Star Wars fans are racist. It's like, no, they're not. Don't get me wrong. There probably are some racist Star Wars fans. There are probably some racist fans of other things. There are probably some, racist people working on Star Wars right now saying that they're not racist. It's crazy. It's so I understand why those channels exist. It's just sometimes I'd like to see them make positive. I mean, in fairness, Critical Drink, who's got such a big channel these days, he does do videos every once in a while where he says, go and see Top Gun Maverick, or go and see this because this is the antidote to the problem we're currently experiencing. And it's like, okay, that's I would like to see more of that positivity.
Yeah.
But what they do, highlighting issues and stuff like that, I think has a purpose. I think also they can become their own worst enemy at times, those kind of channels. But going back to what you were saying about having a passion for it and keeping that stuff alive, it's one thing it reminded me of is when I was working on these German Blu-rays. So over the years, He-Man has been released on DVDs, put on YouTube, and the problem is every time a company acquire it, they want to attach their logo. So it sounds crazy because digital should never falter, yet it's been the He-Man and She-Ra episodes and a lot of the Filmation library and a lot of these 80s cartoons have been so mishandled that, for example, with the 223 episodes of He-Man and She-Ra, wrong end credits were present, the wrong film. There's 3 Filmation logos. They kept using the wrong one on all the episodes. There was loads of errors and stuff. So when the German Blu-ray was kind of offered to me and said, we're doing this set, do you want to help? I was like, oh my God, yes. I said, can we, I thought, I know what companies are like. They just want to put the episodes on Blu-ray and be done with it.
Yeah.
But they had a passion for it, and that's the key. That's why I love Super 7. They have a passion for that stuff. They're not just mass-producing bollocks. They're going, let's do something that the fans will really appreciate, like a little nod or something to something or the other.
Yeah.
And with this German company, Play On, they had a passion for it. They had a passion for it being preserved. So I said, you know, people, you know, often the episodes just get chucked on DVD sets and the same intro is applied to all the episodes. I said, but there are like 21 episodes that use a different Filmation logo. Can we restore that? They're like, yeah, sure. So, and the reason I remembered all that stuff was not because I'm an expert or anything like that, was because back in the 90s, when I was doing this episode review website, I went through all the VHS releases and everything that was broadcast and catalogued it all. So I was able to go back. This stuff I don't even have anymore in terms of VHS tapes, but I was able to go back and be like, right, these are the episodes that need that. These are the episodes that need those end credits. These are the episodes that need those end credits. Like, and I was able to rebuild the series. Like, so now those episodes, the Blu-ray ones, the German Blu-rays, are probably, I would say, 99.9% the most accurate. Well, 100% they're the most accurate episodes out there at the moment, but also in terms of how close we're able to get it to the original thing. It's like, oh, they're you know, it's so wonderfully perfect. And that's not, I don't mean bragging, it's always perfect. It's as in, this is how they were produced in the 1980s, you know.
Right.
You know, the Filmation logo is still there. Because when I was working on the YouTube channel, they were like, we want to kind of get rid of the Filmation logo. And I was like, that's part of the thing, you know, seeing that pop up at the start. Exactly. It's kind of, then there was talk about them wanting to remove Lou Scheimer's name. And I was like, oh, come on. They were like, well, we need it just a bit. And it was just, it's like, what are these companies doing with the brands? And I think, I'd like to think that, you know, within the next decade or so, there will come a, you know, a more loving approach to restoring and looking after this stuff. I don't know if, you know, I'll be around to see it or whatever, but it's really sad sometimes that it's the fans that are the kind of true, because that's the thing, people go, oh, Mattel's archive must be amazing. And it's like, you know, they have so few drawings. Everybody knows about Mark Taylor's 8 He-Man character designs, because the Power and the Honor Foundation, which was consisted of back then myself, Emiliano, and Josh Van Pelt, tracked down all that artwork, or Josh primarily did. And the I found Errol McCarthy, the cardback artist. I found him on a Hot Rod forum. I was just like, E. McCarthy, and I was like, no. And I said to Emiliano and Josh, I was like, I think I found Errol McCarthy. They speak to him. He's like, here's all this artwork. In that artwork are all those 1988 designs where it's I forget the names of the characters now, but it was like the Whiplash with the long neck and the trapjaw arm, all those kind of wacky designs. They turned him into like the Latino Rio Blast kind of character was another one. The Hall Troopers with the kind of snake men heads. Yeah, all of those. Like, we found the artwork and we were like, what the fuck is this? And Errol was like, oh, that was like one of the last kind of assignments I had for the original vintage line. It's like, wow. So we dug that out. And then suddenly that becomes, because that wasn't in Mattel's vault, because Mattel's vault consists of some old paintings and a few other things. But even now I know a few fans that have managed to get hold of those. So it's just weird that it's but as I always say to people, it's like, you have to understand, you know, a lot of these companies, these are IPs. We look at Transformers and think, oh, that's so cool. It's a money-making thing for Hasbro and Paramount. It's not like, let's preserve, you know, it's not that. And the same with Masters of the Universe. You know, we kind of go, why did they make that decision? It's like, well, because money. You know, these are, this thing people, I always say to people, it's like, look, Mattel have done some great stuff over the years. Of course, we would none of us would be here talking about this stuff without them, because we love He-Man and She-Ra and stuff like that. But Mattel didn't do this because they were our friends. They did it because they're a fucking business. They made He-Man to make money. They made He-Man for so many years to make money. It got to a point they were like, He-Man's no longer making money. Scrap the line, and then let's try He-Man in space. That didn't work. Scrap the line, and it's. People seem to forget that sometimes. It's like, I think they put too much trust in billion dollar corporations had their best interests. It's like, no. And there's nothing wrong with Mattel. Mattel want to make money. They will put out as many figures of Origins to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you like buying that, nothing wrong with it. But please understand about, you know, consumerism, and this isn't like some attack on consumerism, but it's exactly what it is. Business makes money. It's simple as that, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, you know, people kind of ragging on Mattel at times for making this decision. Oh, why haven't they done this and why haven't they done that? It's because they're a business. They're not doing this because, oh my god, we love Koldar, let's make a figure of, which I still scratch my head why they made a figure of Koldar, but it's like they're not making Koldar because they don't even know who created Koldar. It's like Straczynski created Koldar. I could probably tell the artist as well if I looked it up, but it's like Mattel don't know that. They've seen this character. It's like, no, he's visually interesting. Let's he's in the cartoon. Let's just put him out as a toy. It's not like here's this grand heritage of this character. It's like, no, it's just another toy. Yeah, and it's, you know, I get why people invest more faith in toy companies, but you know, whatever people you want to put in front of them, I know he takes a lot of shit and he doesn't help himself. But Scott Knightlick, I say, you know, he gets a bad rap, and like I say, he doesn't help himself. But what he did with Classics was phenomenal, because that was very much like Mattel did not want to do that toy line, and he really fought for it. And I always say, like, Classics was the toy line we got, but we didn't deserve it for as long as we got it, because really Classics should have lasted a couple of years and been done, because it wasn't exactly making a fortune for Mattel. That's why it's such a specific collector's line. But yeah, it's strange, you know. It's a weird experience being a He-Man and She-Ra fan. That's all I can say. Or a fan of 80s properties in general.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
We'll try and wrap this up. We don't want to keep you too long, but I'll jump off of that. What do you think is the secret to the longevity of these characters? Like, do you think He-Man will last?
Cut out on us, Bo.
Yeah, I was going to say I can't. Oh, now he's gone into stop motion mode.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't hear you, Bo. Oh, it looks like he's gone into real video from like the 1990s.
Yeah, I think so. It happens every now and then with his internet. That's weird.
No. He's not back yet. Is he doing a chat? Let's have a look.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I'll dip out and come back in. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Oops. So it's just you and I. What was the question? Where was he going with that question?
I couldn't tell you.
We'll have to ask him when he comes back. We'll ask him. Be like, say it again.
Yeah.
Oh, the longevity. That's what he was talking about. Well, I'll wait for him to come back, because otherwise it's just rude of me to. He comes back in and. No, there's still no audio. Oh no. I wonder why that suddenly happened.
I don't know.
You think in this day of modern technology, that kind of thing would be a thing of the past. But yeah, we've got no audio from.
Yeah, still no audio.
I mean, I guess if you want to continue, you could write the question. I mean, the question was about. Oh, we can maybe do nodding, and the question was about longevity and what makes. Yeah. Why these things? Yeah. This is great. So we're going to try and do this without audio. Yeah. So I think I always go to what makes these things have longevity. I think I always go back to one of the things missing from so much of modern properties and IPs is heart. And you know, that core, like we talked about earlier, like you have those writers, those artists, Bruce Timm. You know, yes, they're just jobs, but also they're still putting their best efforts in. And I think the end result is, a lot of the time, especially with He-Man and She-Ra, there's so much heart put into that show. You know, people want to say, oh, it's cheesy and it's this and that. But, you know, you look at the original, like the mini comics and the cartoons and the comics, there's so much care put into them. And I think because so much media these days is almost disposable, you get a lack of, it's like, oh, let's just put this out there and kind of, and then move. That's the other thing, move on to the next thing. Which always kind of shocks me and disappoints me. You know, infamously in recent years, the She-Ra and the Princesses of Power show. You know, I watched the first season. I was like, it's not really my cup of tea. And that became one person's vision, Noelle Stevenson, who was doing that show. And then literally when that show ended, you had that fan base that had come onto that series, like a younger fan base, and then immediately followed no else onto the next thing, rather than saying, oh, She-Ra, She-Ra, let's talk about She-Ra. And the PowerCon, I think it was PowerCon 2018. That was the one where they had guests, the five writers from the She-Ra show, and a few fans came along to that. And there was not, I don't want to sound melodramatic, but there was such a clear divide where they, like those working on the current show, had no interest in the history of it, or history in anything anyone else was doing. There was a couple of incidents with a few friends where it's just like, oh, some of those people are really rude. So, but like, it was amazing. Again, I talk about the drop off. Princesses of Power finished, and online at the time people were talking about it, and then no one was talking about it. And other things, like, to go back to being critical of the writing, I think a prime example was one of the clips they put out for that I think it was like series 3 or season 3 of excuse me, Princesses of Power, was a clip where they had Tongue Lasher, and it was She-Ra or someone, or Glimmer, going like, your name's Tongue Lasher? And it's like, all right, so now we're mocking it, and yet you're mocking the name Tongue Lasher, and yet you're not highlighting the fact that Catra is literally, her name came from She-Ra, Cat-Ra. It's literally just replacing 3 letters with the cat. Right. And it's just, there was this kind of weird thing, and it's like, how is that going to help anybody? It's like, yeah, Tongue Lasher's a goofy-ish name, but it's, if you can't even take the world seriously, then how do you expect any of us to? It's like, that's the cynicism. That's the kind of, what about this old stuff, right? It's just, and I think, 10 years from now, I very much doubt, I mean, like I say, even within the last few years, I think anybody's going to be talking about Princesses of Power, because it always goes back to those, the original things, because there was so much love and care put into them, I think, or so much, talent put into them.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe it's a lack of my understanding on my part, but yeah. Oh, I think Bo just did something in the chat. Let's have a check. Yeah, being too self-aware and cynical is a slow. Yeah, very much so. Bo said, being too self-aware and cynical is a slow poison. Very much so. It's the, I think it's the cynicism is something. I remember when that first She-Ra trailer dropped of Princesses of Power, I think I even did a post where I was like, I hope that this show doesn't, show the cynicism that so many cartoons currently, and it did exactly that. And I was just like, oh man, why did you have to go there? Because the writers just think they're all clever dicks, and it's like, we know it's just write fucking good stories. It's not. I mean, maybe it's difficult, but it's not difficult at the same time, and it's frustrating. I just wish, like I say, I'm not for 1 second saying I'd be any better. Not at all. Like, the reason Mattel hired me back in 2002 was they wanted to keep the foundation of what made the Filmation cartoon work. And I think that's why the 2002 cartoon, not talked about much, but if you look at that show, it's so bloody good. Mm-hmm. It's a really good cartoon. They basically took what Filmation did and said, let's do some story arcs and let's pepper it with this, that, and the other.
Yeah. And
it's just a shame. I think there's an inescapable thing about modern entertainment and writing where you are, the binge watching comes into play. So many factors, and maybe it's so many factors, like I said, and so much micromanaging from above.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those working on modern shows I think they are up against it and are constantly fighting a losing battle. Even if they wanted to, we're going to, for example, when I approached Super 7 about the return of Faker, and I said, you guys did that Curse of the Three Terrors like short film. I said, would you be interested in doing the return of Faker, like making it official? And Brian basically said, I'd love that, but he goes, I don't think you'd really want that. And I was like, how so? And he said, well, he goes, when we did the Curse of the Three Terrors, we couldn't use, we couldn't use any of the original voice actors like in clips or anything. Like, sadly, some are no longer with us. But he said, you can't do the voice actors, you can't use the Filmation logo, you can't use Lou Shiner's, you can't show his name on screen, you can't do any likenesses. There are all these rules, and he said it has to be under 15 minutes. And I was like, oh wow. And he said, yeah. He goes, there are so many rules set by, I guess, NBC Universal, who own the cartoon copyrights, but also, Mattel have their, have to understandably throw their weight around and say, like, well, you can't do this, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So it becomes, it's very problematic. I just wish I knew what the answer was. I think He-Man and She-Ra will continue, but Val Staples said it years ago and said, like, I think he said that there will come a time when, if Mattel and kind of the corporations aren't careful, this stuff will, as melodramatic as it sounds, will die with us. And it will, you will, I think, and I think the problem is, as if you think about Spider-Man, you can think of the classic stories from the 60s and the 70s, because they were so iconic. Some of the 80s stuff is good, but you rarely think about, a lot of the modern stuff. It's because I don't know what it is about the original stuff. I think that applies to so much media. Transformers, Ninja Turtles. Like, how many Ninja Turtles cartoons there have been? And yet if you think of Ninja Turtles, you think of those 1987 designs by Peter Chung. It's like, yeah, I can think of that look, that aesthetic. You're not thinking, oh yeah, the 2000, as good as that 2002, 2003 cartoon was. Everybody goes to like almost like where they, the inception, like where they started.
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I'm waffling, but
for me, I always go back to the 2012 Nickelodeon series.
Oh, okay.
As controversial as people were like, oh, they only have 3 toes and stuff like that. What's with that? And it won me. It won my heart over in that series, especially like that animation style and like how they go and pick up the pizza. Like, my daughter was just talking about this the other day, and how he goes and he's just like, oh no, I don't think you're gonna like it. They all grab it.
That's the thing. Like, I heard a lot of good stuff about that show, so I'm not going to deny that at all. I heard so much good stuff about that show. I guess it's like, from what I understood about that show, like, I'm not going to profess to what I remember. It was weird when I was in America on one of my like trips. I remember, I think they just started showing that series. So I was in like the Howard Johnson Inn in Reseda, and I'm sitting there flicking channels, and then it came on with this Ninja Turtles show, and I think it was like the debut of it or something. And I was like, oh, and I watched a couple of episodes, and I did enjoy it. I'm not going to deny that. And I think that's just, again, it's one of those things where you just had writers writing and not kind of beholden to some, higher power or something. And like I say, with, this new Ninja Turtles film, the Mutant Mayhem thing, I love that Spider-Verse visual style. I think that looks really nice. But, again, it's always that story and how you leave them and stuff. And I just, I mean, He-Man, She-Ra is so problematic. It should be really easy to do, but I mean, Revolution may come along and win me over or change my mind and be like, oh wow, this is really cool. I will watch it. I didn't watch season 2 of the CGI cartoon. Like, I watched season 1, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Again, like, just not my cup of tea.
I actually liked season 2 better.
Oh right, okay. So
yeah. So the first season was like, yeah, that's all right. It's an interpretation. Season 2, I thought was okay. This is like much better. Like, I thought it stood out, like, because they worked in this whole other thing, like, Skeletor has the power and has the havoc and stuff like that. It's just, I thought they did a really good job with it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I didn't. That's the funny thing. This, I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings, but Revelations, the CGI cartoon, happened around about the same time, and I saw more love for the CGI cartoon than Revelation.
Yeah.
Which is funny because you would think that Revelation, which is more aesthetically closer to what we grew up with in terms of cartoon comics, this, that, and the other, whereas the CGI thing was a completely new take on it. But I think people, from what I saw, and like I say, I didn't mind the first season. It wasn't really my cup of tea, but I was like, oh, I kind of dig what they're doing here. But yeah, it's strange in that, like, the CGI cartoons seem to get a lot of love. But like I say, I just wish these things were, once they happen, are celebrated more. It just seems there seems to be like an utter drop off with everything these days. It's just boom. It's just like, I want to see more people talking about, I may not care for Princesses of Power, but where's that fan base talking about it, going, oh, or I don't know. It just seems weird.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a generational thing. We grew up at a time with those 80s cartoons and toys, and we've got this passion that we still love talking about it. Maybe then, a couple of generations later, they're just like, no, we consume it, we enjoy it, then we go and watch the next thing. And we did the same thing. We went from show to show, but there was a part of it that kind of we held on to. I think when I was enjoying Ghostbusters or another show, I was still thinking, oh, He-Man and this, that, and that. Especially, I think, as well, there always seemed to be that connectivity. You'd be watching, I'm trying to think of a show like Transformers or something, and you'd hear a voice actor and then be like, oh my god, like Frank Welker, obviously.
Yeah.
Frank Welker in, obviously famously Fred Jones, Scooby-Doo, and then he's like Ray Stantz and Slimer, and seeing those, and I mean, I'll never forget, like, my favorite one ever was like Transformers the movie, the end credits, and just seeing Frank Welker, and I was like, he's the guy that does all those voices. And Peter, you see all the voice actors, even like the start of The Secret of the Sword, it's like John Owen is the voice of He-Man, Alan Oppenheimer's Skeletor. So it kind of trained you to appreciate these people. So when you're watching a show and you'd hear Merman's voice on Transformers, you're like, it's Alan Oppenheimer doing Merman's voice on Sea Spray, this mini Autobot. So I found that kind of stuff really fascinating, that kind of connectivity. It just doesn't seem to be that much anymore. But yeah, that's I feel bad with Bo not being able to. Are you still quiet, Bo? Oh, that's so annoying. Oh, always made a.
I apologize for my internet.
No, you've been an amazing guest. I appreciate what you're doing. Great. Oh, do you want to read it out? Because I feel like if I read this out, it sounds a bit self-gratifying.
I apologize for my internet. You have been an amazing guest, and I appreciate what you're doing. Great insight. I know you've teased a lot of future content, but what do you have coming up soon that we can all check out?
Let me think. What do the YouTube channel is kind of like my go-to at the moment. That's like my passion for everything. I wonder if I can look, because my setup for it's got my iPhone on a stand on a couple of boxes, because that's the secret of the technology. So my laptop is kind of behind the screen. It's like, I wonder if I can see my my schedule here. I can maybe like say, oh, well, these videos are coming on the channel. Yeah, because it's like the YouTube channel is kind of my focus at the moment.
And that's the CerealGeek one.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just looking over the thing. So rude. Where are we? Oh yeah. So like the next videos I've got going up are I'm doing the commentaries for all parts of The Secret of the Sword, the 5 episodes of She-Ra, so that they're coming over the next month or two. The one about creating Tex Hex, an episode all about the 1982 Hulk cartoon. What else? Not sure I'll be able to do this one in time. This was the top 10 episodes of The Real Ghostbusters, which sounds like such a trope of a video to make. Until I started writing it, I was like, oh, I'll just start writing. It's like a 40-minute video. How can you have a 40-minute top 10 list? But it's like, well, because I love The Real Ghostbusters, so I'm going to tell people why these are my top 10 episodes. So yeah, that one's on its way. There's a big one on September the 5th, 2023, because it's 40 years since a certain cartoon aired. So that video is going to be rather lengthy. 50 things about Merman, Spider-Woman, top 10 masks of Mask. Got a thing where I'm doing a video all about restoring He-Man's transformation sequence. So I've I've got an original reel given to me by Rob Lamb. It's the transformation sequence where they would splice it into the film edit. So when you get the sequence where he's Prince Adam at Castle Grayskull and he turns into He-Man, that shot, and it's got like the original. It's basically a dupe neg, so it's a duplicated negative that they would splice in every time they needed that part of the sequence. So I've got that, and I've sent it off to a transfer house that are kind of scanning it frame by frame to make it nice and big and gorgeous. It'll probably still look like film grain because, of course, but I'm going to do a video about that, the whole process of how we came upon that, and here's how it looks, after all these years. What else? I've got videos for like, oh god, a Transformers one where it's what's the Transformers one? Oh, there was an episode of the Transformers called Call of the Primitives, which was this gorgeously animated one that I'm going to go in depth on. The Zorro cartoon, which is a cartoon that I just didn't care for until I watched it, and I was like, filmation in Japanese animation, how's this going to work? And it was phenomenal. And then just into next year, just loads. There's like so many things I'm trying to work on at the same time, but hopefully I can get it done. I like to get everything done like way in advance. Because I never want my channel to kind of stagnate or just sit there. I always want to kind of put out new content, even if only like a few hundred people are watching it at the time. But it's like, I'd like 600 people watch my latest episode commentary, and I was like, oh, that's pretty fucking cool, And you hope in time that more and more people discover it. But that's the trials and tribulations of YouTube, I guess. It's kind of finding that audience.
We're still finding ours. So
it is. I mean, it's the thing, isn't it? My attitude to it always, and this is the thing, even when I was doing the website back in the 90s, is, I mean, a certain film said it much like this: if you build it, they will come. And it is that kind of thing where if you kind of keep at it, like with your channel, with my channel, you just keep doing it and getting people to, almost like become a force of habit. Oh, I'll go there because I know they're going to do an interview or this, that, and the other. You bring people on board, and slowly you build that audience where it's like, oh, I know that on a Saturday, James is going to update his YouTube channel, or you guys with an interview. You kind of get that repetition built into people. So, and I think weirdly, a lot of like very successful YouTube channels do not do that. They kind of, a week here, and weeks go by, and then another week, and I think they become semi-reliant on, I'll always have an audience. But you see often with that kind of negligence, the viewership dips off. So the thing I want to kind of constantly build in people is like, I'm going to try and update at least 49 to 50 weekends of the year. And given that there's 52 weeks in the year. No, is that right? So,
52.
Yeah, my brain's suddenly not working. I was like,
Well, I know the feeling. I can't share your comments because I can't. I can't. I don't know why it's not letting me share the comments, Bo. But he says I hope you come back because I'm obsessed with voice actors. Ironic having to type that, and he can't get a comment on your supercut of Prince Adam falling on what should have been his desk.
Oh my god, I forgot about that video. I think it was on the official He-Man YouTube channel, which is just falling in the abyss forever. I went back and watched that the other week, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. There's so many videos I made for the official YouTube channel. It's like, wow, I forgot about all these. Luckily, I've still got them all. I kind of want to repurpose them for my channel now, which I've done. I did with 50 Things About Evil Lynn, which was a video I made back in 2013, 2014. I thought, I'll do it for my YouTube channel, but I kind of, did a whole new recording, new visuals and stuff like that. But I kind of want to, obviously there's certain things I can't do just because, copyright restrictions and stuff, but I'll do what I can. But yeah, that's what I've got in the pipeline. There's nothing really, it might be something official He-Man related. I don't know. I heard like the word on the street and I was like, oh, if that happens, but there's not really much to say. I don't even know 100% if I'd be involved. Obviously it would be something celebrating the past, but we'll see what happens.
Well, I wish you the best of luck in that.
No,
and I'm again I hope you come back because you've just been a fabulous guest.
Oh, what's he saying? I can't read that.
Everyone,
good night everyone. Does that say good night everyone?
Yeah, I think See ya.
But yeah, but thanks for having me on and everything. I guess this is this wrapping up because we're down one man, so really.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll wrap up here.
Yeah.
And we'll eventually figure it out here. Yeah, okay. Yep. All right. So again, thanks for coming on. You've been a fabulous guest, and hopefully we get some more work from on official word on He-Man and stuff. So
yeah, but no, thank you for having me on. I'm sorry, Bo. Sorry, you kind of audio checked out there, unfortunately. But yeah, I think we did good. I think we managed all right with the communications.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. All right. Well, until next time, we'll see you later.